and I'm going to admit all into the meeting.
Welcome, everyone. This is the meeting of the Dunn County Planning, Resource and Development Committee and the Land Conservation Committee for Tuesday, December 22nd. We have a public hearing today. The notice of the public hearing is on the screen. I would note that this is the only opportunity to address the committee regarding this proposed ordinance, and all interested persons are invited to participate in said hearing and be heard. With that, why don't we invite council and Mr. Presterbach to present to us the substance of the ordinance we're dealing with. We'll do this. We will do this. We'll have the staff present the ordinance, have the committee ask any initial questions that they may have, and then we have several people who have submitted either written testimony or are asking to present verbal testimony here today. We'll swear them in. The ones who are here will swear in, listen to their testimony, and then the committee will discuss the procedure. So with that, let's start the presentation, please.
Dan? Dan, you're muted.
Okay, the public notice that you had on the screen was read at the beginning of the meeting, and it was published in the Dunn County News on December 2nd and December 9th. And I've had this draft that's contained in the packet available for the public to view and comment on. This ordinance is, I would consider, a new ordinance compared to the ordinance that we've had since 2000, in that it incorporates all of the performance standards that are contained in Chapter NR 151. It does have the caveat to, before we can enforce those standards, we need to offer cost sharing unless the applicant is constructing or altering existing or constructing a new manure storage structure. And it also contains citation authority for the Land and Water Conservation Division to issue citations in the traditional stop work orders and those type of things for enforcement. So I don't know how far you want me to go into it. I have read the email public comment that we received, and I've looked at the public comments, but that's my summary of the ordinance. If there's questions from the committee on that before they would ask for comments from the public, I could answer them.
So we've reviewed this ordinance several times, but are there additional questions from the committee at this point in time?
Supervisor Kinnear here, just a quick question for Dan.
Yes.
And I should probably know this, but the definition for permit was removed then?
There's two types of permits. One is the permit to construct, and the other is, I will have to look here.
I'm looking under definitions. I just compared the old with the new one, like on line 171, 175, permit application. There used to be just one that said permit for definition. So I was just curious.
Now I don't know how to get this done. Well, we have a permit to construct, and And then permit with conditions to use is what was changed since the last revision. And those were in my report.
Yeah, I knew some things had changed, but I'm looking at the actual definitions. I don't see a permit to construct. I don't see a permit. The only permit is permit application. And I was just comparing the one that we got last time and this one. And I just happened to notice the difference. There was a permit definition in the last one, and there is no definition of permit in this one. And I was just wondering if that's intentional.
Okay, just a sec. Okay.
Well, construction permit is a separate definition. Operation permit is a separate definition.
Okay, there we go. They're up under the
Yep.
construction permit. And okay, I see. Now,
Yes.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that before. I just had forgotten, so I was curious. No problem. No problem.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
permit was renamed construction permit, and the language relating to post-construction was deleted and changed to an operation permit. And then that
go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
that operation permit then can have conditions and can be reviewed as needed.
Philosophically, I've always been in favor of making very user-friendly ordinances. And so if the committee would recommend, or, if the committee would like us to add a definition of permit to basically reference either a construction permit as defined above or an operation permit as defined above, we could do that. I mean, I think any user aids that we can add are helpful.
I have no intention of making this more complicated. I knew that we had talked about it. And if I go search permit on a PDF, show up all the permits as it is anyway.
Yeah, you would find the certificate or the
Weather on another type.
the construction permit or the operation permit is what you'd find now, Mike. Our supervisor can hear.
Right, and I should have remembered that from our discussion.
Okay.
Does that satisfy your concern, Mike? Okay.
Oh, certainly.
Any other thoughts before we get into a larger discussion? Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hand or anything. Again, we have gone through this several times. Staff has gone over it several times, but there are clearly things that we may need to additional things we may need to consider. Let's get it right. So let's move on to public testimony. Tom, do you have, we had some written testimony, I think, right?
Yes, I'll bring that up. So this was an email that was received Tuesday, December 22nd, 6:39 a.m. And it came from a Mr. Terry Nichols, and I will read it verbatim. Public comments related to item 10 of the agenda. I have read the Dunn County Ad Hoc Committee on Groundwater final report dated August 8th, 2019. Also, I have read the final report of the LOSG report dated July 26th, 2017. I attended 4 out of the 5 ad hoc groundwater meetings. I did notice that the LOSG report listed timelines for reaching goals such as 0 to 12 months, 1 to 5 years, etc. I have concerns about manure management, especially related to CAFOs. I understand that the Wisconsin DNR is involved. I also understand that much of the enforcement is self-regulated per the DNR. I would hope that there will be a partnership between Dunn County and the DNR. It is my feeling that enforcement is a problem. Frequency, in parentheses. I also am concerned about nitrate levels and isolating the cause of this problem. Water testing and a web-based database is a must for any evaluative process. Recently, I participated in water testing led by Kathy Stahl. It is my understanding that the results will be shared with Dunn County also. Attached are 2 documents obtained from the DNR. I don't know if you can share them with the committee, but one of the documents show the number of animal units in place currently and possible future number of animal units. Thank you for your time. Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax. It should be known that the 2 attachments were attempted to be opened, but could not be opened at this time. So they are not available currently for viewing. And that concludes the public comment submitted by Mr. Terry Nichols.
Thanks, Terry, for those thoughts. Does staff or community members have any questions or comments regarding Terry's comments at this point in time?
Just one question, Mr. Chair. Procedural question. If you're presenting live, you have to be sworn in, but a letter, you don't have to be sworn in for a statement. Is there a conflict there or not?
I'll ask our counsel.
Trying to figure out, there we go. It is, I think the degree of formality is, I think there's an acceptable range of formality for something like this. I mean, so these are Mr. Nichols' comments regarding the ordinance. They're really not evidentiary in nature. Just the characteristic of it isn't so much evidence, just comments on what he thinks the ordinance ought to be. And I think the ordinance captures all the stuff that he's doing or saying here. I mean, the bottom line is it isn't strictly necessary to have sworn testimony for all of these. It's, I don't know, the Board of Adjustment accepts written commentary from people who aren't able to make it. And, it just depends on the, I guess, the perceived need for it, based on the qualitative nature of the information being provided. So if it's more, if it's factual in nature rather than suggestive of, aspirational or suggestive, it's probably better to have sworn testimony because people are presenting what, are ostensibly facts. I think this is fine. I think it's acceptable to take the comments for what they are and without any sworn testimony.
Thanks, Nick. And this, when we made the procedural decision as a board to move to sworn testimony in public hearings, this was one of the, if you remember back, Gary, this was one of the questions we raised. What we don't want to do is get too procedural on stuff where we don't need to be. So I hope that answers your question to some degree. Do you have any response?
There was nothing about like you, Terry, at all per se, but what would happen if a person would go in there and have a lot of factual information? Then would it be necessary or not? Because that might be a way for some people to just get around to being sworn in.
Right. And that's why our general policy is, look, we're just going to swear everybody, we can. I think in this situation, it's difficult to swear someone in by writing. We maybe could develop a form or something they have to sign. We can think about that. But
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Hi, Paul Miller, the county manager. Standard procedure is that written testimony does not require the writer, the submitter to be under oath. Speaking under oath is tied to a person's actual appearance at a public hearing, and the taking of the oath, the affirming of the oath is tied to that verbal testimony. The same standard is not applied to written testimony. The understanding is that written testimony can be thoroughly reviewed by the persons making the decision, including the veracity of any claims therein. So it is not standard that there's any requirement for oath on the part of somebody who has written testimony and provided that. It's included as evidence, it's included rather as part of the testimony and as part of the record. And that is sufficient to the Roberts Rules of Orders and the state statutes.
And in addition, this is designated as public comment. It does relate to a specific item on the agenda, and we have invited people to make comment by email, and he did. So, I mean, I think this can be taken for what it's worth. It has a lot of good suggestions, and as the chair noted, and thank Mr. Nichols for his comments.
Well, let's leave it there. Thoughtful discussions. We all learned something from how this works, get better at it. Again, thanks, Mr. Nichols, for always providing us with thoughtful comments on important issues. We do have 2 citizens who have asked to present directly to the committee. I think, and we will swear them in. So with that, I have 2 on my list, Crystal. That would be Catherine Stahl and Steve Hoaxeth. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So why don't we begin with Catherine Stahl? Kathy, can we get Kathy up?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Kathy, I'll just swear you in, and it's very simple. Just do you swear that your testimony today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, as best I know it.
Okay. All right, go ahead. You have the floor.
I believe I'm supposed to start with my name and address, and I'm Catherine Stahl, a citizen of Dunn County, town of Colfax, with an Elk Mound address. And I really want to thank you for revising the manure storage ordinance. There's a great deal to like about this ordinance revision. And just as a point of disclosure, I am part of the Healthy Environment Action Team, who is, and I think Steve's going to be talking about that, but they have already provided you with comments. However, I'd like to focus on 4 aspects of concern, which hopefully will not override your perception of my regard for the revisions you've made. Starting with line 130, it states that manure storage does not include transferring manure for land application. That's the end of the quote. I find that confusing and disquieting. It's confusing in that the purpose of this subchapter on line 24 of the ordinance draft states one of the specific purposes is to ensure the proper storage, handling, and application of manure. So one of the purposes of the ordinance is the very thing the ordinance says it won't include. So I find that confusing. We're also told that this ordinance, we're told in this ordinance that NRCS 634 provides a waste transfer standard, although the standard, the 634 standard, specifically states this practice standard does not apply to transfer by vehicles or temporary surface pipe or hoses from the storage facility, treatment facility of system, or loading area to the field or another storage facility. And we know that dragline use is increasing and it has some real benefits. But where does one find the performance standards for dragline transfer of manure, and who is to assure that temporary transfer systems are appropriately managed? Now, I do recognize that DNR investigates spills, which would probably include a dragline leak when that occurs. But that investigation happens after the fact, and it isn't establishing performance standards, nor does it address preventing problems. I also recognize that other counties are discussing the legality of their jurisdiction to regulate dragline and other temporary manure standards transfer systems. But I do ask that Dunn County investigate that, is also, if you haven't already. And as we've seen in the news, significant leaks from drag lines happen. I'd like to go to line 317. Manure, commercial fertilizer, and other nutrients shall be applied in conformance with the nutrient management plan. And I want to thank you for including row crops in the expectation of nutrient management plans. As we learned from Kevin Masaryk during the livestock study group that Terry referred to, row crops have a major impact on the quality of our groundwater and surface water. I also want to thank you for line 320, indicating the nutrient management plan shall be designed to limit or reduce the discharge of nutrients to waters of the state. But here I want to go to. My concern, however, is specifically about line 329 that states the plan may allow for an increase in soil nutrient concentrations at a site if necessary to meet crop demands. That statement should be altered to indicate nutrients may be added at a site in a manner that balances the impact of the nutrients on the area water quality and the needs of the crop being considered. It's not fair to those with private wells that they have to absorb the financial cost of a new well or the health risk of high nitrates, while the producers don't have to absorb the financial impact of their production. Now, once again, don't get me wrong, like you, I truly want our farmers to succeed, and they're obviously more apt to succeed if they have appropriate nutrients for healthy crops. We all depend on those farmers, as we all depend on our water. To make a flat statement about possibly increasing nutrients to meet crop needs is not a realistic expectation to solve what in some areas is a real water quality issue or trending increase in nitrates. Now you can say we covered this in other areas of the ordinance, but it needs to be clarified in that line. And that line does not recognize what we learned in our work with the livestock study group. We learned that even in areas with 100% nutrient management plan adoption, the nitrate problems were not resolved. As Kevin Masaryk pointed out, let's say 50% of the farmers in an area are currently over applying nutrients to their fields, and then they adopt nutrient management plans, that there is likely to be an improvement in water quality. There is not evidence, however, that this will resolve the totality of nitrate issues in compromised groundwater quality. And you'll recall that Kevin Masaryk spoke about changing land use from woodlot to corn, or from alfalfa or other perennial crop to corn or potatoes, will definitely result in increased nitrate in the groundwater, whether there is a nutrient management plan in place or not. The point is, we can't suggest farmers can increase nutrients to a crop without assuring we're accounting for the impact that increase on that specific crop will have on the ground and surface waters. Please change line 329. Thirdly, I ask that you consider as a necessary corollary to this ordinance and other water quality interventions that the Land and Water Conservation Division maintain a long-term and robust study, an evaluation, if you will, of the degree to which increased use of nutrient management plans improves water quality here in Dunn County. If we do not accomplish what is necessary for water quality, then we need to rethink what we as policymakers, regulators, landowners, and I need to think about what I'm doing, water users as a totality need to do to accomplish safe water quality. Finally, we need to define a goal. Are we trying to assure that no private well in Dunn County samples above 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate? Is our goal to plateau or reduce the trend of increasing nitrate levels? Is the goal to get all private wells to sample below 10 milligrams per liter nitrate, when we know that anything above 1 milligram per liter is said to be caused by humans? What are we shooting for with this ordinance? Where are we going with this? Now, again, I reiterate, I see nutrient management plans as a step in the right direction. However, we've been told by people who have carefully studied this that nutrient management plans are not the solution to water quality in our circumstances, and in all circumstances, excuse me. And are the performance standards adequate to reach which goal? Which goal do we have? You know, I really think that our farmers and private well owners depend on you to be scientific about evaluating the degree of success and defining what success is with the interventions required in this ordinance. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me make my comments. Again, thank you.
I can't talk right now. I'm on a Zoom line.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any, does the committee members have any questions of Kathy at this point in time? We can come back to it later if we need to. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much, Kathy. The next presenter is Steve Hoaxeth. Steve, can I swear you in?
Yes, sir.
Will you affirm that your testimony today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address, Steve, and then provide your testimony.
Steve Hogsett, 614 Woodridge Court, Menominee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here this morning. Just a little background here on our group. As Kathy mentioned, we are part of the there was an assessment made back in 2019, and there was a survey done by many hundreds of citizens within Dunn County. I think it was even over 1,000 people were asked to give their opinion on needs regarding health. And they came up with 5 distinct groups. These are citizen groups primarily. Alcohol, nicotine, and drug was one. Chronic disease prevention was another. And then in our health environment, and we ended up calling it Healthy Environmental Action Team, and we use the acronym HEAT, H-E-A-T. And I'm here today on behalf of that group. And the other 2 groups, one was on housing and the other was on mental health and wellness. So there are 5 citizen groups that have been working for the past 12 to 15 months, thereabouts, on their respective groups. And our team has been looking at this manure ordinance, and we've had some we had a breakout group that looked at this in detail, and we met a couple times, and we went through it on a line-by-line basis, and we have marked up that document, and we've inserted comments, and we sent our marked up ordinance to Tom and Krista. And so you should have a copy of that. And we just want to submit that. We don't want to go over all the, all the marks within the ordinance itself, but we want to give this to your group and ask you to take these comments into consideration when you look at the ordinance yourselves in more detail. So that is my input this morning. Any comments, questions?
Any comments from the committee or questions? For now, then, I'm wondering, Dan and Nick, Dan in particular, if you have, I know you've seen the HEAT recommendations, CEA's recommendations. Could you provide some thoughts about how you see that?
Yes, Tom, I have reviewed them, and I do have considered each one of those. Are you going to, I can go through them. I was expecting to do that after you close the public hearing, but unless there was.
Now is
Oh.
good.
We could do that if you'd like. Let's do that. That's fine. Actually, you know, I would rather do it in the public hearing, and here's the reason. It may be that the committee would say, and I don't know about this, but the committee could say, you know, there are questions we have that need to be resolved, and we would like to continue the public hearing so that we have an opportunity for further discussion and resolution. So if we could do it inside the hearing, I'd rather do that. So why don't you proceed now?
Nick, do you have a comment on that, or?
The significant
Well, I mean,
stuff. Yeah, our definition of direct runoff is identical to the definition contained in ATCP 51, right?
yes. Mhm.
Which incorporates by reference the definition in NR 151. And in neither of those places, you know, the comment looks like it's oriented towards giving a better definition to what significant means. And neither of the regulations in the state administrative code do that. Dan and I talked about it, and we feel that each unique environmental contamination or sensitive environmental area, they're all unique and sort of, you know, they're not identical across the board. And so what's significant in one case may not be significant in another. This allows for, I mean, admittedly, there's some subjective interpretation in there, but it allows for an evaluation of a site to be based on the facts and factors that are involved with a contamination or protection activity. And if we were to, you know, just use mathematical standards, you know, some contaminations wouldn't be significant regardless of the outcome, and other contaminations would be regardless of the outcome. And we're trying to tie together the act of, you know, where the activities that are being regulated, and tying together the things that the bad things we don't want to happen. And it just doesn't lend itself, I think, to a numerical standard. And the factors to be considered are contained in the ordinance and in the administrative code. Does that sound, I mean, did I miss anything, Dan?
No, I don't believe you missed anything there. I know that, you know, right now, the Department of Natural Resources is working on a guidance document to determine that significance, but that has not been developed and it has not been incorporated into the statutes at this time. So I feel the language that we have with the word significant or amount is what we have to go on right now and what we should retain.
And I would add, one of the areas where particularly at this time in history, over the last several years, the regulations adopted by the state have taken a very, very much superior relative position with respect to county regulations. And in a lot of these areas, counties are not allowed to regulate more strictly than state law does. You could debate, I guess, the wisdom of that, but it's true. And so, you know, if we make our regulations parallel to what the state is and we find other inroads, you know, to regulate, there's less of a chance that a regulation that we've enacted here at the county level will be found to run afoul of state regulation.
Okay. Any other input that the staff would have or the committee would have on this testimony at this point in time?
Mr. Chair, is there an opportunity as a member of the heat for me to reply, or would that be out of order?
What? No, that's fine, Kathy. Why don't you do that?
In the chair's discretion, I think.
Yep. Please go ahead.
I certainly am sympathetic to the comments that have been made, from the staff and the Corporation Council. I think when we were thinking about significant, we were not necessarily talking about a numerical definition as much as what factors will determine significance. So all the things that you talk about that make for complex decision making about what's significant, what are those factors? Just so in terms of disclosure, how is it that you look at significance, what as a regulator?
Well, first of all, every time you look at this, especially when you're looking at direct runoff, there's a unique situation out there. I mean, in the town of Grant, something may look totally different than the town of O'Galley. And you have to, first of all, look at the site. And we often do this in conjunction with the Department of Natural Resources, at least we have in the past. But there is no, I know that sometimes DNR would look at this and they would test the water and find a biological oxygen demand and determine whether it would kill fish or not. It is, after the fact determination, but it's different on every site. And
okay.
If we're looking at the standards, for our barnyard, we need to get that down below 15 pounds of phosphorus in a watershed, a watershed that is on the 303D list, impaired watershed. We need to get that down to 5 parts phosphorus per million, 5 pounds of phosphorus. If in an impaired water. So, I mean, those standards are there when we actually go in and that Barney model can help us in that decision, but it isn't in statute to use it to determine the word significant or what a significant amount is. But when we cost share and offer cost sharing, then we need to get down to 15 pounds of phosphorus annually or 5 pounds. But there's just a little difference there between actually cost sharing on a practice and looking at a barnyard to see if there's direct runoff.
Dan, could you talk about the I'm not sure if Steve had this on his or not, but Kathy made mention of line 317, 329, the decision to increase nutrients in areas where it's necessary to meet crop needs. Why you think that's the correct?
Okay. Tom, could you share your screen with me for just a moment?
Dan, I'm sharing it. You should have it on your,
I can still see yours on mine.
oh, you want to share your screen?
I'd like to, yes. Can you share?
Oh, yeah, let me stop. I misunderstood you.
Okay, one of the things that Nick Langer, Corporate Counsel.
Dan, we're not seeing anything.
You're not seeing it.
I'm not anyway.
Is that better?
No, once you click your share screen and choose the window that you want, make sure you click share at the bottom right-hand corner.
Oh, okay. I have not done that. Share at the bottom right-hand corner.
When you click, did you click the share screen at the bottom of your Zoom?
Okay.
Then choose which one. There you go.
Okay. All right. I had a talk with Lisa Trumbell at DACCAP yesterday about this language. This is NR 151.073. And Lisa agreed that this language is very confusing, but it is what is written in state administrative code. And I've taken NR 151.073 here and highlighted in yellow. Unless otherwise provided in this section, the plan shall be designed to manage soil nutrients concentration so as to maintain or reduce delivery of nutrients contributing to the impairment of impaired surface waters and to outstanding and exceptional waters. And then I went into our ordinance and I copied down line 329 and or 328, 329, and it is just exactly the way it is written in NR 151. So I just don't feel we have any leeway to change that line. It is in the administrative code. As to maintain or reduce in impaired or outstanding or exceptional. It doesn't allow increasing soil nutrients.
Okay.
So what this allows for in number 2 is that increase in soil nutrient concentrations would be removed by that crop that would be growing there because it's meeting the crop demand. So it would be a kind of a temporary increase, like putting the fertilizer on in the spring and having the crop, you know, you couldn't put more on what that crop would remove during the growing season. And I just, you know, feel that our hands are pretty well tied here to what's in the administrative rule. It's word for word what we have there. So now let me get back here.
And then Dan, is there any other comments or questions on that item? Clarifications?
Not on that item, no.
Yeah, the question was raised about the relevance of dragline management or just application management, I guess. Could you address that, Dan?
Well,
I think that was.
I feel that we're pretty much tied to NRCS standards. This ordinance adopts the NRCS Wisconsin Technical Guide. It does not have a standard for drag lines or for manure tankers or for, you know, any emptying the pits. NRCS has stopped with the construction of the pit, and they've also stopped with, you know, they include getting the manure from the barn into the pit. Especially, you know, that's very important for groundwater protection. And I realize that there is definitely a resource concern if a drag line breaks or if they, you know, if there's a tanker tips over. But there is no standard that I know of that we could incorporate into our ordinance to address that.
Are we limited in our ability to develop that standard on our own by the state regulation, or is that a possibility at some point?
I believe it might be a possibility. I know during the livestock study operations group, the highway committee looked at, some standards for drag lines on county roads.
Mm-hmm.
I think developing that standard would be, I don't know if the county has resources enough engineering to develop that. It could be a recommendation to, the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection and to NRCS to develop that standard through the Standard and Oversight Council.
Any other questions anyone else has or clarifications? Mr. Hogsett, do you have any comments you would like to make and follow up?
No, I don't, but thank you.
Okay. Well, then I will, unless there are other comments or questions, I will close the public hearing and move on to item 9, which is considering the resolution authorizing this ordinance to the county board. And we can discuss anything we discussed earlier or other items. But the question, I think, is: Are we prepared? That are we comfortable that this ordinance is in adequate form to be advanced for consideration by the county board?
Tom?
Yeah.
Chairman Quinn, I do have some other recommendations that I would like to look at, and definitely going to, let's see here. Tom Carlson, if you could go to line 107.
Okay, I was just going to ask you if you wanted the floor or want me to quit sharing. Line 107?
I did quit sharing. You should be able to put line 107 up.
Okay, I'm there whenever you're ready, Dan.
Okay, I had a conversation yesterday, a final one, with Lisa Trimble at DATCAP, and she said that this is something, I'm not throwing her under the bus, but she did say that we have 2 definitions in here: malfunctioning manure storage and mismanaged manure storage facility. And those definitions have been taken out of NR 151. And she recommended that we remove them from our draft copy before we would send this ordinance to the county board. And they have been replaced with language that we have on line 403. We already have the language in NR 151 that replaced those, and we have that on line 403. So she recommended removing those 2 definitions. And then she also recommended removing lines 408 through 413. That is our second reference to those malfunctioning and mismanaged facilities. And she recommended that because we have that defined on line 403 to 406.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, time.
Dan, I guess I'm confused. If we reference it later in the ordinance, why do we not include it in the definitions? I'm
Okay, line 403 that Tom has up here now
right.
talks about existing facilities. Okay. And basically we have enough language in 403 to 407 to cover malfunctioning or mismanaged. Those terms should be taken out of our definitions, and they should be taken out of line 408 to 413. Okay.
Supervisor Kinnear, I have a question for Dan, if that's okay.
Yes.
I kind of like what Nick said earlier, consumer friendly. Putting in malfunctioning, mismanaged certainly gives someone an idea what's going on. And what is the problem in leaving them in?
I guess they could be left in. It's just that they're not defined in the state statute right now. They're defined as a manure storage facility in existence as of October 1st that pose an imminent threat to the public health or fish and aquatic life or cause of a violation of groundwater standards. They shall be upgraded, replaced, or abandoned. So I don't know if there's a big problem leaving them in. It's just with Lisa's recommendation to take them out. And she said that she apologized. She should have saw that in her initial review of the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm just weighing in here. I guess I don't see any reason for the deletions. Maybe okay. I'm just thick, but I think it's appropriate to include them.
Well, they can stay there. We have them in there.
We could, it seems to me that the definitions may have value in order to describe, to give a particular description of something that might be occurring. The regulation so the definitions are up, in the definitions section, but the regulation aspect comes later. That's at line 408. It might be that we have to, it might be that removal of that would be okay if we, we could revamp the regulation that's contained in, in D between lines 403 and 407 and incorporate those ideas by reference. I suspect if those definitions have been removed, the styling of the regulation that's contained in E, beginning at 408 and going through line 413, might have to be revamped in order to be consistent with state regulation. We can look into that. I mean, I'm in agreement. I think we can define it. Even maybe it's pared down a little, but we can certainly define it because I believe that it does make it, it makes it user friendly, or I guess from a different perspective, it gets a little more pointed at particularly defined circumstances. But if the regulation that we're trying to enforce is gone, we may need to revise that in order to avoid having a regulation that the state itself has not considered important. I've made some notes in here on this.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to follow up on what Diane said and what I mentioned earlier. We put these standards into our ordinance to make it closer to home, really. So it isn't always going to the state and saying what they've got. We've got it actually written here so people can see it. And these lay out and seem to make it clear to a layman like me I'm wondering, Supervisor Bjork, if there's anything in here that you see would be a problem from a farmer's standpoint.
Not really. The only concerns I might have is that sometimes that manure that we treat as a toxic waste, and it's a very valuable nutrient to keep our soils fertile. And the only other thing that makes me nervous is when we get some, and I'm not saying this discouragingly, but environmental groups are the ones that are making the comments that don't really know the day-to-day operation, what it takes to operate like a modern farm in Dunn County. So sure, we got to protect the water, but let's also protect the nutrients, and so we grow up like a healthy crop and keep our soils fertile.
I think that we all agree on that, Gary.
What I'm saying, let's not go too far to one side or the other side. Let's kind of meet in the middle. Sure, we got to have regulations, but we also got to have the freedom that we all enjoy to grow our crops and feed the nation. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Okay. Anybody else? I think I appreciate all those comments. From my perspective, the main thing is to get this right. Rights are important. The environment's important, but we don't have the right to ruin the environment. We don't have the right to impose regulations that put unrealistic hardships on farmers. So getting it right is not easy. I did appreciate Kathy's comments about the need to sort of assess whether nutrient management is the tool that is the right tool for long term in soil health and water quality and all those issues. But that's a different question. That's a larger question for the future of the division and the department. Any other comments? I guess.
Okay.
Dan. Yeah.
Tom Carlson, can you go back to line 277, I think it was. Okay, one of the comments that we received from the heat group from Mr. Hogseth was to change this on line 278, that word from may to shall or will. And I definitely think if we're going to leave that, we should do that. That was on lines 278, which may include, we can change that to shall or will include. Shall, I think, is what would be better. Agree with him on that change. The next thing I think we should talk about a little bit would be the line 388. They did bring up this 25-year, 24-hour storm. And that is, I guess my recommendation would be to leave that. I just want to explain that NRCS that takes care of the standards gives us the rainfall events and what the predicted runoff is from those rainfalls. And right now that 25-year storm is sitting at 5.09 inches. I know that we've had some, extremely severe storms in certain areas of the county. But I do feel that their data may be a little bit behind, but it definitely is being kept up to date. So I'm comfortable with the 25-year, 24-hour storm and NRCS's determination of that being right now 5.09 inches in Dunn County. Other item I'd like to take a look at is on, I believe,
Well, Dan, back at line 299, there was some,
297 to 299, yes.
yeah, there was some recommendations regarding a tillage setback.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, and right now, NR 151 allows for a 5 to 20 foot tillage setback. And if we went to a 20-foot setback, we would definitely be more restrictive than the state performance standard. So I think that right now we're limited by the 5 to 20 foot tillage setback that we have in this language.
And your argument, Dan, is that that's adequate.
Well, I won't say it's adequate. It's as far as the law allows us to go as a county right now. Under 292, chapter 92.15. Okay. Now, if you would go to chapter 92.11 or chapter 92.17 and do a shoreline ordinance that would require a county referendum, you could go more restrictive than what's in our 151. Okay, but under these two sections, 92.15 and 16, we're only allowed to do what's in the performance standard, and that's a 5 to 20 foot. Line here.
Do you have other points, Dan?
I have one other point. I can't find it. Okay. Under 10.08 on line 280, under activities and facilities subject to regulation, we have feedlots listed. And this is something that Lisa pointed out. We can regulate feedlots under livestock siting. And that's what we have incorporated in our zoning ordinance. Under this ordinance, we can regulate or manage the runoff that comes out of them. And she was concerned that we had feedlots here without any explanation or any, in fact, she recommended we just take feedlots out of there because there is no set standard for NRCS that says, what a feedlot has to meet. The standard that looks at them as a sediment basin, as a vegetated filter strip, or a collection site to collect the manure and put it into manure storage, or collect the manure to feed to, and there is really no standard for a feedlot. And someone could pick this up and expect us to regulate a feedlot that's not in a water quality management area. We can regulate those feedlots and the runoff that comes out of them in a water quality management area, but chapter 92.15 and 16 do not give us, the right to just plain out regulate feedlots or license them or anything else. We have to do that under another section of state law.
And I guess my thought on that is, none of the regulations contained in here have anything to do with feedlots, except to the extent that they may be a source of manure or animal waste escaping. And that is subject to some regulation. I see we do have an exclusion for feedlots. I'm looking for it right now. And now I'm not finding it. I thought we had a, oh no, never mind. I'm thinking of something else. I guess that I'll let the comments that I've made stand as made. No more. I don't have any more on it.
Okay. Other comments or questions? So let me ask this. I know Mr. Hogseth submitted, in addition to his testimony today, submitted a document with suggested amendments to the ordinance. Did everyone on the committee get that? So you haven't had a chance to look at that?
Yep.
Okay.
It was in the packet.
Well, it came after the packet was sent out. I put it in the packet today just so I had everything in one document, but no, this information, this would be the first time the committee is seeing this.
Yeah, that's what became apparent to me as we were having this discussion. Just so you know that. So what Mr. Hogseth did was go through the ordinance and identify specific areas that his comments, and I think to some degree Barb's comments, and some of the items that Dan addressed were specifically with regard to those comments, but I don't think, it doesn't sound like the committee had a chance to go over that ahead of time. Not that it's, well, it would have been nice, but. So we have, and Nick, you can help me with this, but we have some choices. Our choices to, can we amend this at this point in time, Nick, or would we have to go back through a public hearing?
No, you can amend it right now if you wish as a committee. So you could direct staff to prepare an ordinance, including amendments, and you can do it by motion, which is more formal and certainly not inappropriate at all. Or if you're able to specifically enumerate them, we can prepare a draft that contains the changes you want. Another alternative would be, I think, just to postpone sending this up to the county board right away and direct that staff prepare a draft incorporating recommendations that, I mean, I think it's fair to say Dan did not address all of the comments, but he and I have discussed them, and it's fair to say that many of them are well made. And and I actually found a typo that I've already corrected.
Yeah, I saw that too.
The word weather.
Yeah. Anyway,
you could direct us to just prepare another draft for consideration at your next meeting. And we can be prepared to make recommendations on the pros and cons of all of the submitted comments that are made during the public hearing. And you'd have another clean copy, or at least a copy with proposed changes or possible changes integrated into it, so that you could view them in context rather than having them partly in one document, and partly in another.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
If I may, Procedurally, so we've got a public hearing, the point of which is to afford the public an opportunity to review what is going to be recommended by this committee to the county board for adoption. The committee has not had an opportunity to review all the comments from the public, which may affect some desired changes to the ordinance as drafted. My recommendation is that you may want to consider continuing this public hearing to a date specific. That would be one of the dates for the scheduled meetings. Continuing it to that date, there's no need for republishing a notice or anything of that nature, because anybody who has an interest in this public hearing and in the progress will have already been notified by watching this as to the date and time of that continued public hearing. This would afford time for staff to craft any revisions or responses to any of the suggestions coming from the public, and that revised document can be distributed to the committee and made available to the public for view before that continued public hearing is opened.
The public hearing has already been closed.
Oh,
We're now at a point where the committee is discussing the ordinance and whether to advance it to the county board. I agree with everything that Paul said as far as how to deal with it now. It's certainly, I mean, the public hearing has been held. All of the people that wish to provide input have done so. And now the committee has that information. And based on the language of the draft ordinance and the information that was received during the public hearing, and if directed, additional work by staff can bring it back in a tighter condition for more discussion and either action or, another round of revisions.
Right. And I will modify my recommendation along those lines. As I tried to follow the bouncing ball, I'd lost track of the fact that we have closed the public hearing. Yeah. But anything coming out that is different from what the public had a chance to afford does raise the question, what I would put to Corporation Council. It does raise the question of which ordinance it is the public was afforded an opportunity to review and comment on. If there are substantial changes that result as a consequence of public input on the ordinance that was presented today, arguably the public may have a right to review and comment on any revisions. There may need to be some consideration as to conducting a second public hearing then on the revised and updated ordinance prior to it being forwarded from this committee to the county board.
Well, the public hearing is designed specifically to allow members of the public to bring ideas. And theoretically, some of them will be good, some of them perhaps aren't, but the committee considers them and they react to them by discussing a proposed ordinance and changing language if they feel that it's necessary. I mean, having a public hearing because of changes that are made as a result of a public hearing results in, and it's theoretical, but the public hearings would never end until the very last one where no changes are felt necessary. And so we would just continue to have public hearing after public hearing to discuss changes that were made as a result of the previous public hearing. I don't think that's what's contemplated. The draft ordinance that was presented by staff is the one that people got a chance to comment. The comments were, I mean, honestly, they were excellent. And they're food for thought, and so the committee can decide to think about it and make changes today so that the county board could hear it in January, or the committee, I think, can say to Mr. Prestibach and to me and whoever succeeds Mr. Prestibach, we have some changes that have been proposed. Would you please look into them and come up with some suggestions or responses specifically addressed to each of those so that we may consider them in a better finished product, a better proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And that my initial thought when we got into this was that we would continue the public hearing, but I didn't realize that everyone had not received the written testimony. So I agree with the comments that are made that I don't know I don't think I need a motion to postpone action on this. We can simply direct, without objection, we can direct the staff to consider the testimony and the comments and the discussion and provide us with if they think appropriate, a revised draft that addresses them, or then explain the rationale behind that. And we can consider it at a future meeting and get it right, which is the most important thing. So I know that's what you want to do with your last week here, Dan. Well, too bad. So thanks. And with that, unless there's another comment, we'll take that as where we're at. Thank you, Nick and Paul, for your help with my poorly understood Robert's rules. I think we're done with the regular agenda, and are we not? Except, so we have two things left. One is to a farewell to our good friend Dan Prestavock. And then after that, we will go into closed session to consider some employment options. We will not make we'll consider that. So first of all, we'll say goodbye to Dan. Tom, I know you've been working with staff to kick something off. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, so is my understanding after talking with you, Mr. Chair, that staff would go around and just say, take 1 to 2 minutes, make it very brief, and just say a little bit about working with Dan. And then Bob Kaner, also, he's one of Dan's longtime employees in the Land and Water Conservation Division. He has put together a PowerPoint, a slideshow with some pictures. So I guess why don't we just start with Bob Kaner? I'm gonna stop my screen sharing. And Bob, if you're with us, if you want to share your screen and provide narration. For those of you that don't know, Bob Kaner is, like I said, an employee in the Land and Water Conservation Division, has worked with Dan for a number of years. So I'll turn it over to you, Bob. And then afterwards, if staff want to go around, I guess we'll start with the managers if they want to say a few words. And then Dan's staff are also in this meeting as well. And they certainly could have an opportunity to say a few words about Dan. And then obviously if Dan wants to speak. So whenever you're ready, Bob, you're muted.
Is anybody out there?
Yes, can hear you.
All right. All right, this is high tech. Welcome. John Sipple. Can you see the slides? Can you see my slides, people?
No.
Is the screen being shared?
You need to hit on the bottom center of your screen, the share screen. And then it'll bring up a pane that shows all the things you have on your desktop. Then you need to select your PowerPoint and then hit share in the lower right-hand corner. Get your cursor down near the bottom of all the people that you see. Sometimes that bar, the toolbar down there, if you will, is hidden. If you get your cursor down there, it should show up, and there should be a green share screen.
Yeah, on the PowerPoint itself, right?
Well, you have to hit share screen.
No, on your Zoom screen, Bob. Go to your Zoom screen.
Okay.
Go to the bottom.
Dan,
there's a
if you
green
want to run
share
over and
screen.
help
Click
him.
that. There you go.
I hit the share button.
And then if you
It's
want
like can you guys see it now?
Yes.
They can see it now. So then what do I got to do here?
Start the slideshow.
Can I put it in presentation mode, the whole thing?
Yeah, put it in presentation mode.
So presentation mode.
Just go up to slideshow and start from beginning.
Oh yeah, Tom, hang on.
from beginning.
Can you still see it?
Yes.
Nice. Tell you what, staff are important, support people are important. We got a good crew here in Dunn County, just some of the best, always have. John Sipple of NRCS, if he's out there, he wanted to just show a few slides and say some comments about Dan. Are you out there, John?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Dan, I guess first of all, I want to congratulate you on your time with the county. Everyone that I've talked to, current and past employees, has said nothing bad about you, but only good. As
Wow.
a fellow coworker, as a fellow conservationist, I would reiterate those same claims. You know, your heart is in the right place. You're out there for conservation. You're out there for water quality. You're out there for soil quality. These two slides here basically is one of the first endeavors that I think that we partnered with, is trying to expedite and try to improve soil quality within the county. You took the advantage of having some extra funds and was able to leverage those funds to get a no-till drill. That no-till drill has put in hundreds of acres, if not thousands of acres, of cover crops, as well as pasture and hayland plantings, interseedings, and so forth. So as we move forward in our soil health journey, this tool is going to be a great asset to the county as well as all the taxpayers. Next slide.
Next slide.
I think if you just hit your space bar, Bob, or the arrow
Okay,
keys.
there it is. It's catching up.
As part of that soil health journey that the county started on, we created the Red Cedar Demonstration Farm. Dan, you were an integral part in that, as far as coordinating people, as far as coordinating agencies, whether it be the Dunn County Land and Water Office, the CVTC, the NRCS, UW Extension, basically keeping everybody in line, getting the goals and objectives of the county in place, and then trying to set up the system, set up the farm, so we can hopefully improve and demonstrate what you and I envision. Having a healthy soil can improve our crop yields as well as improve our soil and water quality. And I think we're in year 6 now of the demonstration farm. Based on year 5 preliminary data, we can show that our no-till systems are improving our soil quality as well as our profitability compared to conventional till systems. I think year 6, based on preliminary data, will show the exact same thing, if not further move our totem pole down the line, showing that no-till can be more profitable than conventional till systems in our sandier soils. Next slide, please, Bob. Building on the partnerships, Dan. These next couple slides here are probably going to be some of your early work as well as some of your latest and greatest work. Building the partnerships. That was what all of your past employees, past co-workers, past partners had said. You were great at meeting with people, expressing, having empathy, seeing what their concerns are, seeing what the county's concerns are, and being able to meet in the middle and have a win-win situation for all parties involved. I think Dobbs Landing is probably the latest cause of that, or the latest case of that. You were able to meet with private landowners, as well as nonprofit groups, as well as county staff, to acquire a property that has some very significant environmental as well as wildlife habitat concerns. So this is example 1 of some of your hard work. Next slide, please. Way back 1980s, 1990s, Dan, when you first started, the water bank program, you were very key in contacting landowners, in preserving our wetlands, in restoring our wetlands, preserving and protecting our grasslands for wildlife habitat. As you look at this photo, you can see numerous wetland restorations out there, numerous the grassland mosaics that Dan was very crucial and contacting the landowners, coordinating with NRCS, or at that time Soil Conservation Service, putting water bank contracts in place, getting our wetlands restored, protecting our surface waters, protecting our groundwaters, and recharging them in a positive attitude, or positive manner, excuse me. Go ahead, Bob. Most recently, education. I mentioned on the demonstration farm how you were integral in getting that established and getting this started. Most recently, partnering with UW Stout and their REU projects. You volunteered your farm numerous times. We're probably in year 5 of going out to your farm and doing grazing talks. Hearing the excitement from the students, hearing the excitement from the professors, being able to, the one picture, having the students on a tractor, having them drive your tractor, having them move the cows with you, being able to see your cows, the education component that you have, the willingness to share your farm as well as your knowledge goes a long ways. Your ability to communicate is going to be greatly missed. You do a great job. You've done a great job with the county. You are a great water quality advocate and a great soil quality advocate. I appreciate your hard work. You will be greatly missed from an NRCS standpoint. Next slide.
I think that's all you got, John.
Thanks, John. That was very nice. Looking at that slide with the UW Stout Lakes students, I remember 2 years ago when they first arrived at the farm, and a girl from Southern California got out of the car and one of the cows mooed and bellered, and she said, "Is that what a cow sounds like? It's the first time I've ever heard a cow moo." And of course, many of them, it's the first time that they ever had an opportunity to drive a tractor. The clutch on that Ford is pretty good, but there's a lot of quick starts.
These kids are from all walks of life and all parts of the United States. So they all come to Dan's farm for an evening of learning and sharing and petting the cows, and then we feed them pretty good. So we have a nice cookout. Good job, Dan. Thank you, John Sipple. You're a good companion. Very well said. The rest of this will probably be a little sketchy. We're going to talk about Dan, a little bit of history, and who knows what his future looks like. Before I click into this, I just want to just a little something from maybe the staff has the same feeling. We are going to miss Dan's knowledge and wisdom and variety of skills. Even based on the recent discussion of this animal waste ordinance and regulations, this includes his understanding of Dunn County ordinances and state statutes. The guy could have been a corp counsel, right, Nick, or a lawyer. Instead, he chose to work close to the nature and to the people within it. So, Danny. We did a river survey. We started in the Hay River, northern part of Dunn County, and we floated the whole thing with a variety of boats and then a variety of weather and circumstances. But we were doing inventory of the eroding banks is what we were doing. So this is Dan starting out his career back in 1978. This department started in 1974 with Jim Forster being hired by the county. So Dan came to work for Jim Forster in 1978. They had a staff of Lillian Odness, and she was a sweetheart. Dan got to learn engineering from Erling Wheeler. and how to run a transit, how to build dams. And he also got to learn how to do conservation planning from Ed Weber, NRCS. So we worked as a team, and there's young Dan down the corner there checking one of looks like a pipe inlet or a terrace inlet. You can see in this bottom corner, you guys see my cursor. This gentleman here, he's looking for his keyboard, I think. I don't know what he's doing. But it's like the future was foretold there, I think. We did it all on paper. We used to do a newsletter. So then Bob showed up, 1983, got hired on with the SCS to start with. And then in 1985, I took a job with the county as a technician. They expanded their staff. And so then it was a crew of Paul Gessler, Jim, Dan, and I. Paul was a GIS specialist. That was pretty high tech back then. It was pretty hard to believe that somebody can actually see us from the moon that, or from the sky that weren't aliens. So we all had to adjust to the new world. But there again, Dan did farm planning back over here. We had a lot of group planning. We did a lot of construction. And back then we worked on an animal waste management program. So that's something. Erosion control plan. We worked on that. How are we going to solve all of our problems? What I liked about my new job I got working with the county was the break room. It was a lot different than we have now. It was just pretty relaxed. You go in there and take a little break. And then we were out on construction. We always used to set up a camp just to come back to and rest up because a lot of it was pretty physical. And we had to spend a lot of time with these contractors trying to get the job done right. So there's our friend right there. Staff, Janelle Newcomb joined the group. She's been here ever since. There's Jim Forster. He was a very good teacher, very good mentor to all of us. Rick McElkey joined us, brought his own character with him. And there's Dan right there with his friend Sig Sorensen, the maintenance department. A lot of good times together. And here's Dan when he started cleaning up a little bit, finally. And he was getting his filing system organized at that time. You could tell he had a future as a county conservationist. Looked pretty good. I think he had a pile here, and then them deer horns, they always got to have deer horns. Other co-workers that we've known throughout the years. We are very tight with the DNR employees. We work side by side with them in many aspects. NRCS, Del Thompson, Ed Weber. There's the staff of SCS and LCD. Gail Smith, Tammy Pellet, Lori, somebody. That's Erling's retirement. Erling taught me everything I knew back then. Ed Weber. Moving ahead, current staff, more current. We guess we've had a lot of change. You know, you think your people are around forever, then you realize they're not. You know, they come and go, especially the younger ones. George Hidesco joined our group. Mary Butler, you'll see her later on. She was really active. She was always willing to help. Alan Carlson was a good support conservation planner, a good friend of ours also. And he's had a ton of knowledge. Worked at the highway department, went back to school, got a degree, became a conservation planner for land conservation department, and he was a farmer. And you got this group here. What can I say? Dale Gagner is the one there. Amanda joined us. This is a little more recent. You guys probably know all these people. That was Chris Getsky. He is now the director of the invasive species program here in Dunn County. Lindsay Olson, she's moved on. Rick Ingley, he moved on. Tina's here. And this is our current staff, except we're missing one person. Travis Dreyer joined us. He brought a lot of knowledge with him from Pepin County. We hate stealing Pepin County employees, but we do it. So the latest contribution to our office staff is Heather Wood. Heather's been hanging out with me quite a bit. She started probably earlier this summer. I can't remember. It hasn't been very long. And she's trying to figure out who we are and what we do. And it's pretty hard to describe who we are and what we do. We do a lot. We have such a diverse program here, land conservation departments. One of the things we do is maintain the county flood control structures, 3 different dams. And so I was showing her these. It's good. We have a lot of kind of fun things we work on and a lot of difficult things we work on. We have a tendency to do things ourselves if we can do it within house. This is Rick McElkey and Leah Nicole are doing some seeding. This is how we trim the bushes in Dunn County. We use a bulldozer and strip things out.
That's the Knights Creek Dam.
And this is the Knights Creek Dam. And we had a tow drain that was plugged up. Things were built back in the 60s, and it was a mystery what's going on up in the earth embankment. So we finally did it the old-fashioned way with shovels and a couple of good staff people. Steve Olson's back with us. And we used a rotor rooter homemade by hanging a sump pump in the creek. And then you use a hose to dig out the dirt. Not too high tech, but it was a value to have Dan on site. The guy's got a lot of knowledge. He can do plumbing. He can do seeding. He can do about everything. He can work with cattle. The guy has a lot of knowledge and he's good to work with. He's got a good temperament. Being with Dan always was favored to, let's do it as a group effort. Let's do it as something the staff can do together. And we finagled a grant to get a boat dock on Lake Monoman. It's in Lake Monoman Park, which is a beautiful county property. And it's just a destination you can go and you can walk out onto the lake and fish or view the beautiful lake. So we put this in ourselves and it was good. We figured it out. Some assembly required, but it's working every year. We take it in, we don't take it out. Maintenance has now adopted it. We assist them. So the old tree planter program, I'm just going to go briefly through some of these. I think Dan was instrumental in starting the tree planting program. Some of these things have definitely been with us for a lot of years. I can't say what. I know when I started working here, Dan's the one that managed this program. And it evolved to actually getting this, is it called a Roughland Planter, Dan? Is it called a something?
Yeah, Side Hill Planter.
Side Hill Planter. It's a pretty nice machine. I think you worked a deal to get grants on this.
We got a grant from the Rough Grouse Society to purchase that planter. They purchased it 100% and donated it to us. And it is the first time the Rough Grouse Society ever invested money in establishing habitat. They always took habitat that was there and manipulated it by cutting and managing it. So I think in the whole nation, that was the first time that they invested into establishment of new habitat.
I don't know. I think it's terrific. This thing gets used. These all get used every spring. Successful program. Travis Dreyer is now the one working with these. It's a lot of work and they're dangerous. They're kind of heavy, but he does a terrific job with it. You got to understand hydraulic hoses. That's kind of a mystery. Dan's always been an advocate for learning and for teaching. This is up at a field day, Red Cedar, farmers field day. Dan sits in the front row all the time. Always has something to learn. This is a very successful group. This type of activity has been very successful in Dunn County, including the Hay River group over there too. Dan has an interest in what goes on above the ground and what goes on below the ground. These are soil trainings that we do. Normally we apply them to manure storage, but we apply them to earth structures and everything else. And so we understand what's going on below the ground. And he's always right in it. And of course, we talked about this. John did a wonderful job. This is a good activity, along with many other ones that we do. This is not time to mention them all. But these cattle are beautiful. They look very tasty to me. Is anybody offended? I'm just saying, if you're going to eat something, this is what you want to eat. The Dunn County Island, this is Dan's playground. I think he grew up real close to it. Somewhere, I get lost here. Maybe right here on this farm, Dan?
Right there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where Dan was born. And so he has an attachment to this island. When he first got hired, they started, the county had bought this island, moved all the farms out, and he started working to reforest the cropland out there that had been cleared. And there's a whole legacy on that. There's very few people that can cross the river and get out in this island and come back alive. There is more trails and more creeks and more rivers, and you can't figure out if the river's going upstream or downstream. So I follow Dan when I go out there. It works pretty good. And that island's been part of our group here for many years. Jim Forrester back, they used to take the committee down there. They would do the Dunn County Island tour. They'd preview all the wood cutting. They would cook them lunch down in Dan's trailer. This is called Camp One Horn. And I've spent many happy hours there around the campfire. And that was all part of being on the LCC committee. The Forsters were out there just recently surveying the timber again. You get across the river any way you can. There's Dan's boat, always a river guide. Harvesting the timber, bringing it across the river. This is a rock crossing that was installed many years ago that we continue to maintain. You can see the trucks drive through the river, and so does some staff. Anyway, this is kind of a head-on collision coming up here, I guess. And of course, there's always a cowboy that wants to ride his four-wheeler across the river because he can. That was Alan Carlson. Before the loggers could come in, they had to open up the roads. They were pretty rough, pretty full of trees. So then we hired, I don't know, was it the county maybe came in?
County Highway, yeah.
County Highway came in, good partners with us, created roads, graded them back, and then we went down and reseeded them. We just drug them with four-wheelers and crank seed on there to try to keep the ground covered with grass. You know, even if you're out in the middle of the island somewhere, it's important. It's in our nature. So we had a good work crew. We had lunch afterwards back at Dan's camp. I think Janelle is dreaming about something. But anyway, it was pretty nice. But it was tiring. It was a workout. And looking back, if anybody knows this guy, Pat Thompson was the county administrator at that time. And Dan was giving him a tour out there. And this is all part of a book that has now been published about the Meridian Islands. And talked about Brush Island. This page is in that book. This is the county committee getting a ride across on a logging truck. Looks pretty exciting. And there's these trucks again. The book that was just published by Jeannie Anderson, and Dan's been working with her on this book for a while, furnishing her information. It's really interesting, but it does highlight the history of the Dunn County Islands, which we now own, the Dunn County owns. And there's the tour guide of the Dunn County Islands. That river is something you don't want to mess with if you don't know what you're doing. So now we're moving on to Dobbs Landing. John talked about this. It's great. It's a beautiful piece of property. It makes a wildlife corridor all the way through the Red Cedar River. Just wonderful to keep picking up some of these parcels. I think public access is so important. More and more people cannot go out on the land. There's more and more no trespassing signs. There's more and more, that's my buck. You're interfering with my hunt, whatever. It's just changed. The world's changed so much. So it's good to have all the public lands we can have. Dan received this award, if you can read it, 2014, by helping to coordinate this effort, along with many other good people. This place is open for tours. We do a lot of different tours up there, looking at restorations, wildlife species, invasive species. We always have our door open for the groups to come and visit, show off what we have. Red cedar cutoff, people know what that is. Some people do, some people don't. Dan again was instrumental in bringing this together. The effort was started by Jim Forster and Dan. In the process, Jim retired and then actually passed away from cancer. So it's kind of a, whatever. A lot of players, a lot of contributions, bringing everybody together to make something happy, something happen. This is Jeannie Forster and her kids accepting the dedication award. It was really a nice ceremony. And that's a picture of the red cedar cutoff. When you look at this thing, this could have all been houses out here. A lot of this is buildable lots. Right, Bob Colson? Now we got buildable lots over here. Casey's got, and Trenton Cato has a dream home that there ain't, I don't know. Anyway, they're altering the landscape, so it's nice to have some natural area here. This is open to the public. This is one of the main accesses for ice fishing. We built a parking lot here with the DNR, and you can park there and you walk down through the woods and you get onto the ice, or you can put in a canoe, any carryable boat, and you can also put a canoe in on this side and get into the main river. It's really a nice piece of property. Thank you, Dan. Ooh, Pheasants Forever. I took this slide out of some other presentation and altered it. But I could type right into it. It was pretty cool. So I'm thinking 30 years plus. Dan, I think, helped start this group. Did you, Dan?
Been to all their banquets. I wasn't one of the founding members.
You weren't, but you were pretty close.
Joined right after, yeah.
We've both been on the banquet committee, him a lot more than I. I was on this a couple of years. Really a good group, and they do a lot in Dunn County. So he got an award for his dedication efforts. He received the Red Cedar Chapter Achievement Award. In 2007, he received the PF Statewide Conservationist of the Year Award. There's them pretty plaques, and they're pretty cool. And it's leaving lands preserved for future generations, open to the public. There again. Just going to talk about them a little bit. Dan had the ability to work with everybody. He can work with statewide Pheasants Forever people. He can be interviewed for the newspaper and do pretty good. This is Dave Carlson. And he can also work with the local people. His connections to the Muddy Creek area, I think, have been instrumental in getting a lot of these properties preserved, purchased by DNR. These Rebelia people, they could have been his grandparents. I don't know. He seems to like them a lot. Francis Rebelia. There's the property right there. This is another one, a link property. And Dan, you want to expound on this? What I like is, this is what it looks like. This is what it could look like. A few more of these guys out here. This has now been preserved for future hunting and hiking, bird watching, the whole works. I know this was kind of a challenge to get this. Dan, was it?
Yeah, this was a purchase that's been added to the Muddy Creek Wildlife Area, but I guess the big challenge here was to get enough people together to make that purchase happen. And I appreciate Al Finder at the Fish and Game. He said, go and have it all appraised. We'll come up with that. And we ended up going to Pheasants Forever National and Wild Turkey Federation And I believe this is the first land purchase or project anywhere in the United States that the Turkey Federation and Pheasants Forever worked together on. So our goal was to expand the size of the woods up there on the north to about double the size so that we'd have more turkey habitat. They bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's real nice property.
Really nice property. Highly used. Back in the good old days, the DNR, they'd be buying up all this land and be working with them. And then it's like, well, who's going to burn the prairie? Who's going to do the burns? LCD, can you come and help? And so they would call about 7 o'clock in the morning and say, is anybody available to come help burn? And a lot of us would raise our hands if we didn't have construction going on or some other thing. And we put on our dirty boots and our dirty clothes, and we'd join them at some of these properties. It was exciting. We were the helpers. They were in control. And so we just kind of followed what they said we're supposed to do. This is actually Lake Monoman Park. We assisted in the burns down there. That's Mary Butler, our support specialist, running that drip tank. They were pretty desperate for volunteers, so they would take about anybody at that time. And some people just like to light stuff on fire. Dan always had a smile on his face as he lit these fires. I don't know what that means, but so even in his home life, he's not afraid to do some controlled burns. And they do a good job of it on property they own down by Downsville. Him and his brothers and some friends. Now I got a little story. One time we did, when he first bought his farm, he wanted to burn up one shed. So we got a few of us buddies out there, and we were doing such a good job, we decided to burn the second shed too. Oh, it was a little out of hand, but it burnt. I don't know if the fire department ever did come or not. I think it was out of hand, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun. Okay, back to this. We open up Dunn County to a lot of groups. This is the Conservation Technicians, Statewide Technician Tour. And I can't remember what year it was, a few years ago. Janelle was instrumental in getting this thing, organizing this. I worked on it, Dan worked on it. But people were impressed with Dunn County. We showed them a wide variety of stuff, including our rifle ranges. What else? Doan Bean, maybe? I don't know, it's all confusing. We do a lot of tours.
And one thing, on these tours, it's been great to have Supervisor Jim Anderson driving the bus. We appreciate that.
Oh, man.
He can give the good explanation as we move around the county, and I believe he donates his time for that. Appreciate that, Jim.
Yeah, it's tremendous. We've been doing this for a lot of years. This started by Jim Forster. Back, I can't even remember dates very good. So, but Dan's been a genuine player in this. Here he is driving the boat there. You just give everybody a fishing pole and a bunch of sharp fishing hooks, and you just go do it. You know, it's always uncertain who you're going to have in your boat and how it's going to go. But Dan has a good temperament with all these people. It works out well. We get a lot of smiles. And there's some staff there. Lindsay, Scott Sins, instrumental in this. There's Danny right there. All good players. So that did not happen this year, apparently. Keep this moving. So once in a while, we have to rely on Dan and his boat skills. I don't know who's replacing him. This next person you hire is going to have to know how to run a boat, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. Hope that's in the interview questions. This is County M Bank up by Colfax. We're asked to help survey this thing. High bank, kind of rough. Dan shows up with his flat bottom with a Go Devil on it, smile in his face, starts hauling all these people around with their $30,000 equipment. You just got to have faith that you're not going to die. You know, this is really a lot of current and a lot of snags, and you don't want to end up there. There's a history of people flipping boats and this stuff. And anyway, he's pretty good. And here he is in a canoe. This is part of this river study we did. And his biggest thing is trying to figure out where the rivers run, and is it go north or south? Some of these are pretty curvy rivers. But he's skilled in the canoe. It was enjoyable. He finagled us around a bunch of these snags. I wore a life jacket. I was always, I don't want to go in the Red Cedar River without a life jacket. It makes you nervous. One of the last stretches we did, we were coming down the Hay River, trying to get to the lake, and we were getting froze in. I mean, it was cold, late fall, and he was running the boat in the back, and I was doing GPS with the banks. I had my life jacket on. He had his lucky hat on. I guess that's what keeps him safe. I don't know. I think he still has that orange hat. So we went downstream, and then it started like, we ended up just getting frozen. We had to walk out. We ended into a dead end of ice and slush, and we couldn't get out. But we walked out. We find our way home. So anyway, so this is, Dan got this award from the county board not too long ago in November. So apparently they kept him around and must have liked him well enough for 42 years, which is pretty good. I think he's been much appreciated employee. So Dan, we don't know if the guy is lucky. We're going down the river through a bunch of logs and stuff, and he looks over. He's always not kind of paying attention. He goes, God, there's a buck. And so I flipped the camera over and took a picture and got a picture of this nice little buck. Well, at conferences, he's been lucky. Land and water conferences. He works late into the night selling conservation. He puts his tickets in the barrel like a good member, and he won a Matthews Bowl. Now, I don't know if that's what killed this deer this year or not, Dan.
Yes, it is.
It is, huh?
Mhm.
Wow. This is a deer he took out of a bow stand with a compound bow this year. Pretty cool. Nice deer off his farm. If you can say that, I think that's pretty, you've got a pretty good life going. So, anyway, Dan, we wish you well in your future endeavors. We hope this retirement is going to allow you to spend a little more time in your historic home, a little more time with your beautiful cattle, sharing them with everybody in the world. This is on Dan's email he sends, whatever, these little tags, and I like it. The landscape of any farm is the owner's portrait of himself. And I think Dan's farm pretty well shows that. Hope you have more time to spend playing with your friends.
Well, thanks, Bob. That was very nice.
A lot of times in Orange.
Mhm.
Dunn County Islands, deer hunting, some familiar faces from the past, Jim Forster and his kids, Stevie Olson, Rick, DNR employees, John Cole, great contributor to Dunn County. Hope you got more time to spend with your siblings. Or siblings, you never know. You never know what life's going to give you. This is his brother Les running the boat. This boat here looks like it's in trouble, full of too many deer hunters. I don't know. I was behind them waiting for him to start taking water. This is 7 in the morning on a very cold day, and you can see there's ice out here. It's a fun group, but I always relied on their knowledge and skill of the river to keep me alive. And then we would take break, and these were all, it was nice. We shoot a deer every so often too. So Daniel, there you are in your younger days.
Mhm.
I think that's Lake Atticus, maybe, Canada. Time to take one more look back.
Lake Atticus, yeah.
Snug down your cap and push off for a new adventure into this life well spent. That's about all I got. Anybody want to say anything? You sure are welcome to in the crowd out there. Any questions?
Any staff want to chime in?
Sure, I'll take off here. I just want to congratulate Dan on his retirement. Dan and I have worked together the past 13 years or so, and over that time, we've developed what I believe to be a great working relationship as well as a friendship, and I hope that continues. What I'll miss most about Dan is his vast local knowledge of the area. So often we're on private property, we're trying to get permission, we're dealing with absentee landowners or farmers that may be renting the land. And there's a lot of days you get frustrated. You can't find anybody around. I go and talk to Dan, and he always, I mean, it's hard to stump him. He knows who the farmer is, who the landowner is, who their kids are, where they live, where they work, what's the best time to get a hold of them. So I'm really going to miss that about Dan, just all his connections around the county. Even, DNR, different agencies, you can't find a phone number for somebody. He'll pull out his Rolodex, and by God, he's got a cell phone number for the guy you want to get a hold of that's unpublished anywhere else. So I'm really going to miss that about Dan. And I just want to thank him for all the guidance that he provided to me as I was starting out as a new manager back in 2010. There was a lot of things I was really green about, and Dan had experience, and he always made time to help me out with things. So, thank you for that, Dan. And probably the most memorable project I remember working on with Dan is our time down on the Chippewa River. As Bob has already explained, he knows the river like the back of his hand, and we couldn't have got half the work done we did down there without Dan's help. So thanks again, Dan. I wish you all the best in your retirement. And while I have the mic, I'm just going to read a statement from Morgan Girk as well. He can't be with us this morning, so he put this together and asked that I would read it. He just says, I apologize for not having the time this morning to attend this important meeting. I'm working with my resource recovery teams to finalize the closures of multiple sites this week in preparation for the transition to municipal management at the end of the month. The coming holidays continue to pose challenges in getting everything completed due to reduced hauler availability and increased demand for end-of-year hauling services. I want to wish Dan Prestobach the very best in his retirement. Dan's lifelong commitment and passion to conservation is a beacon of stewardship in Dunn County, and he will be sorely missed. I have enjoyed trading fishing stories and secrets with Dan, as he is always in the know regarding the latest action on the local lakes. Congratulations, Dan, as you take the next steps towards personal fulfillment in your well-earned retirement, and I certainly know you will not run out of fun and exciting things to do in the woods and on the water. For the new candidate that will be taking over for management of LWCD, I wish them a warm welcome, and I look forward to working with them and assisting them in whatever ways I can as a fellow manager. So that was from Morgan. And I will turn it over to Bob Colson now. Bob, you have anything?
Yeah, is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was Dan. It was nice looking back.
Bob, your mic just went almost mute. Can barely hear you.
Is it working now?
Yes.
All right, it'll probably go out again. There's something with my mic. It was nice looking back and seeing Jim Forrester, and I'm probably one of the few people here that also knew Jim Forrester. And I remember when Jim retired and having a discussion about the future of land conservation. And Jim told me, he said that he had been hand grooming or personally grooming and handpicked Dan to be a successor. And Jim had quite a vision for land conservation, and Dan stepped into some very big shoes. And just looking back and seeing the stuff that was presented today, which is just a small sampling of things that have happened in land conservation since the time that I've been here, and certainly since the time that Jim Forrester was here. I think that Dan also is going to leave some big shoes to fill, and I know that Jim Forrester is very pleased with his selection, and if he were here, he would be speaking, and I'm absolutely certain that he's up there, Dan, looking down and smiling and just wishing you the best. And I'd like to just say that I have been here, I don't know, too long. Sometimes it feels like, and I know that I'm getting to be long in the tooth because this is my second land conservationist that I'm wishing off and bidding farewell to. So best of luck to you, Dan, and please stop in and see the little folks here when you have time. Thank you.
And then I believe there are Dan staff is here. So if one by one, if you'd want to briefly say some words about Dan.
This is Steve Olson. I can jump in. Dan, first off, I'd like to congratulate you on 42 years of service in the conservation field of Dunn County. That's pretty incredible span for anything. I'd like to thank you for being a mentor, a friend, and a conservation partner. When I started this field in 1995, fresh out of college, Dan come up to my farm or my parents' farm, and we walked it over, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Well, you got something special here, Steve. I hope you can keep this going." And I said, "Yeah, I'd sure like to do that." And we were looking at a field and it had some erosion on it, and he said, "Boy, this is pretty shallow soil to keep tilling it the way you are." And I said, "Yeah, I've been trying to tell Dad that for years." And we had a conversation with my dad, and we were signing up for farmland preservation, and we said, well, maybe we should look at putting this field into rotational grazing. So in 1995, we started rotating that field, and I'd like to say 25 years later, we're still doing that with that same field. So thanks, Dan, for that. Hope you the best of luck in the future with whatever path you may take. So thanks a lot, Dan.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And maybe I'll just go down the list here so we have some semblance of order. But the next person I see on the list is Amanda Hanson. Amanda, would you like to say a few words?
Hey there, everybody. This is Amanda. Well, I guess first off, this is probably our first meeting where I don't have to say, geez, we're going alphabetical, and it always has to start with B, the letter A. So thanks to Bob and also to Steve for stepping in. You know, they've all said some great words. You know, I echo them, and just want to say congratulations, Dan, and wish you the best on your retirement.
Thanks, Amanda.
Okay, the next person I see on the list would be Heather Wood. Heather?
I mean, I guess I haven't really been here all that long, but in the time I have been here, you've been a great supervisor, and just want to wish you the best of luck and have fun out in the woods.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay, and then Janelle, if you would like to say a few words.
I have worked with Dan for, I guess, over 33 years. He's been the only boss I've had since Jim Forrester, so we're going through yet another change. Over these years, there have been a lot of changes in all the issues that our division faces on a daily basis. And Dan has taken pride in working to conserve the land and the waters of our state and our county, to conserve them for the future generations. And I'd just like to thank Dan for his years of dedication. I've enjoyed working with him, and congratulations and good luck, Dan.
Thanks, Janelle.
And then we have Tina. Tina, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you. Dan, I just wanted to thank you for bringing me on with Dunn County, and also for the tours you gave me of your farm and talking rotational grazing. You've really taught me a lot about rotational grazing, and I really hope that you, now that you aren't working or won't be working, that you'll get the opportunity to fish and hunt and spend more time with your cattle and do all the things that you love doing that you never found the time for before. Good luck.
Thanks, Tina.
And then Travis.
Well, Dan, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your retirement, and thanks for everything that you taught us. I echo what everyone else has said about all your great land ethics and things you've been doing over these years. Again, I wish you luck and hope you have a great retirement and have lots of fun with your family.
Thanks, Travis.
Okay, and then, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. If the committee wants to say anything, and then of course, if Dan has any words. And then just as a reminder, we did receive a letter of appreciation from the Tanner-Monoman Lake Improvement Association that you as the chair may want to read.
Sure, can you put it up, Tom, or is it?
Sure, Bob Kaner, could you please stop sharing your screen when you get a second? I'll bring up another, okay, thank you. Okay, should be on your screen.
So again, this is from Tanner-Monoman Lake Association. Dear Dan, the association would like to sincerely thank you for all your hard work over your career, caring for the water resources of Dunn County and the Red Cedar watershed. Thank you for being a strong and reliable partner to our Lake Association. Our mission includes increasing awareness of water quality issues, advocating resource protection, and celebrating our rivers and lakes through community engagement. We think you have exemplified each of these points, having a strong ally for the common good of water quality. Thank you for your efforts. Dunn County developed one of the first farmer-led councils in the state, and the Red Cedar Demonstration Farm was developed to showcase new concepts tailored to our region. You supported the Red Cedar Conference and consistently supplied a staff member to represent land and water conservation on our board. We know that through our membership in Dunn County Conservation and Sportsman Alliance, how you have brought attention and funding to projects that provide more inclusive access to the water for all members of our community. Not to mention the countless memories created every June during our Sharing Resources event on the water, or the opportunity to inspire the next great steward of natural resources through the Conservation Intern Program. Most recently, you have worked to update the county's manure storage ordinances to include state standards and bolster the ability of local government to protect our lakes, rivers, wetlands, and drinking water. You will be missed. All the best in your next big adventure. That's from the President Liz and Vice President Amber and the Treasurer Ben.
Very nice, thanks.
And just to finish this up from the board, I guess, from the committee. You know, we thanks staff, first of all, for that wonderful history lesson and the reminder of all the good work that Dan has done, some of which I knew about, but some I heard about for the first time today. And I do think of all your work. I know our committee is exceptionally proud of the work that the department staff do. And boy, that history really showed the value of that. I think Dunn County's got a great reputation. It's all thanks to you and our fearless leader, Dan, who took over. And you know, you really see a lot of our work on the committee is dealing with ins and outs of ordinances and languages and words and whatever. And so it was good to see the work out in the landscape that you all are really, really doing. But it's interesting that Dan can do all that and then be able to deal with real discipline and intelligence with the details of every ordinance we go through. Even if it's not a land conservation ordinance, he usually has some insight into how that ordinance relates to the rules and regulations that we have to follow in land conservation. It's a remarkable feat and much appreciated. And also, of course, the understanding of farming, the local roots that were so clearly drawn out. I think we all feel like Dan brings enormous integrity to this job. And in the end, that's what makes conservation work for our community, is that we can trust the people who are involved in it, that they approach it with a spirit of generosity and an open heart. And boy, Dan, we will miss you a lot. You have been really good to work with and have always put the interests of the county, your staff, and our department first. So we do have a gift certificate, $200 from Shields, that you can use to Hanson toys for the future, and a deep appreciation, and also a request that you stay available, because we are going to need your advice over this next transition period. That's for sure. Do other members of the committee want to say anything? Dave Bartlett.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Dan. I know I've talked to you just this morning, but I really want to express my thanks for your years of service, the trust and respect that you've gained from us, and I'm not going to mention all the things that have already been said, but I want to comment that you've always been there for me. I know I go back to the Jim Forrester days, and you've always been there to answer my dumb questions and help educate me. And you're still doing that. You've done that just recently. So I really appreciate, and I will miss you greatly, as the whole county board will miss you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman Bartlett. Thank you.
Anyone else?
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, Diane.
Dan, I would love to thank you for all your service to the county, but particularly picking up on what Chairman Bartlett just said, for always being so patient and answering my occasionally dumb questions, and educating and sort of mentoring me as I joined PR&D. So thank you for that. Thank you for your contributions to the county, and boy, enjoy this next adventure. I will remind you that it's a slight adjustment, but it gets better over time.
Thanks, Dan.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mike here.
Mike. Okay.
Yeah, Dan, a lot of that stuff I didn't know about, but it doesn't surprise me, all the good things you've done. And one of the things that they mentioned is you're a good teacher. And I got to echo that, because burned into my mind are two words when I think of you, and that's soil health. So you taught us a lot about different things, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thanks, good friend. And we'll miss you. Have fun. See you out in the field.
Thanks. I just would like to, I don't want to go on along with this, but I mean, I really do appreciate, especially my staff, the things that I learned from Jim Forrester were to, sit down with people and, look at things from both sides, take the time to explain why something should be done rather than to try to regulate people. And that does cause me some mixed feelings with the manure storage ordinance right now. I'm putting those regulations in, but I remember one thing that Jim Anderson said, we're looking for voluntary compliance. We're looking for compliance with state standards. I think we need to do that. When I took this job over 12 years ago, I had to kind of decide which things I would drop that Jim was doing and which ones to continue. The burning has definitely been taken out of the picture for land and water conservation. The disabled fishing with the Alliance and taking people out to enjoy the water, I think, is something that I valued and continue to do. As far as the committee's concerned in the future, I would ask you to work with the FSA rep as much as you could to get a land conservation committee. I think that would be very valuable going forward. With my staff, Tina mentioned grazing. I know we're ad hoc groundwater committee. John Sippel recommended, a grazing network in Dunn County with Dunn County grass-fed beef. I think there's a lot of potential there. Something you may want to consider as you go forward. I just remember 12 years ago when I interviewed for this position, one of them interviews, there's a 3-part interview, but one of those was a 45-minute conference with Gene Smith, the county manager at that time. And Gene kind of asked me what I saw for the department. And I said, well, Brett Favre has been the quarterback at Green Bay for about 10 or 12 years, and he's going to move on to another team in retirement, and Aaron Rodgers took over 12 years ago, and now I think it's time soon for the Packers to have a new quarterback, and for Land and Water Conservation to have a new county conservationist. But thank you and thank my staff. They're really dedicated, and I appreciate all the work they do, and definitely continue to work with them. So, and I will be available for help if you have any reason to ask. Thank you.
A little applause.
And I will say, I think for a virtual departure, this has been as good as it could be. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So the next item on the agenda is a closed session where we will do an informal interview